Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mind and Muse Crafts podcast. As usual, I am your host Caroline, and this time I am recording from the island of Puerto Rico, my home, where I live with my husband, and so I'm back at home, and the scenery has changed. The lighting is awful because it's a rainy day here. And I might have to stop in between if the rain gets too loud. But I was considering going to have some lunch and then come back and record this. But I figured, let me just get it done with and out of the way. If not, I'll keep finding excuses of why not to do it. So, I have actually a lot to share with you today because I don't know how everything got out of hand. And I've been working on several things at once, which is not my usual modus operandus. But that's the way it's going to go, at least for the next couple of weeks. So, I guess I'll get started. As usual, I try to describe something that I have made recently or have made at some point in my crafty adventures, and that I use. So today I'm going to share with you a new set of earrings. I don't know how well you can see them because I might be too far away, but they are it is a pattern that I found free on Instagram, and I follow a Instagrammer who goes by the handle YouCrafter, and she was announcing that she had gotten together with other crafters and they were doing what they were calling, I'm going to look up this name for you so that I get it right, Gift Stravaganza Cal and Blog Hub. I might have copied that wrong, but it's something of that. YouCrafter on Instagram. And what she did was she got together with other crafters, and they were offering for every day in November a pattern that was free for 24 hours, but of course you could find it on a blog, and you could use the free pattern from the blog if advertisements don't bother you. Or you could get it for 24 hours for free on Ravelry or Etsy, wherever that person has their selling site, their shop. And then after that, well, you could still get it there, but you would have to pay for it. So I was late to the game. This pattern turned up on November the 12th. And I was checking out my Instagram on the 13th, early in the morning, so the coupon had expired, but it is a small enough pattern that I was able to obviously make it from what is on the blog, and the advertisement didn't interfere too much. So I'll show you what it is. These are called the Quick and Elegant Crochet Earrings. Quick and Elegant Crochet Earrings. And the blog is CelticKnotCrochet.com. CelticKnotCrochet.com. Like I said, it is no longer free on her shop, but it is still free on her blog. And basically, they simply use a little bit of number 10 yarn and beads if you would like. Oh, you also need the hoop that is gives the wire frame for the earrings. So I didn't have the hoops, I did have the yarn, and I did have the beads, and I wanted to make these earrings. So I crafted my own frame, the metal frame. And the important thing about the frame was that it had these two loops, one to hang your beads and one to put your earring wire. And so I decided, well, I'm going to make the earrings and I will stiffen them so that they'll be at their best when I use them for the podcast. I already wore them out because I kind of figure that at this age in my life, I don't want to take for granted what I can do tomorrow or next week or next month. So I wore them yesterday. And no worries, you can make it larger or smaller. The only thing you have to remember is that you need to have a total amount of stitches that is a multiple of 5, but it is a multiple of 5 in such a way that you will have 5 stitches at the bottom to form this large, I guess, shell, as she calls it here. And then the smaller shells along the side, you have to have equal amounts on each side of these 5 stitches, and that amount has to also be a multiple of 5. So I used 65 stitches, 5 at the bottom, and 60 divided by 2, 30 on each side. And it works well. It looks to me like a vintage, maybe a photo frame. That's what mine looks like anyway. And then she gives you various ways that you can add the whatever beads you want to use in the middle. I used pearl beads. You can add them to your project using head pins, or you can just use thread. And I used the thread because I was just trying to see just how much of the project I could actually do with as little extra finding as possible. So you might need to go to Walmart or whatever your bead store is to buy the frames and the fish hooks, but whatever type of earring finding that you like best. And but you could hang your beads using the same thread that you used to make your earrings. So I'm happy with those. It was an ideal pattern for the upcoming gift season, or actually for any time during the year that you need to make a quick gift and you know that the person that you're going to gift to likes to wear earrings. Because if they don't like to wear earrings, it would be a good idea to gift them to her, whether they're crochet or not. But these are quick and they're cute. So I think I know a couple of people that would all be willing to wear them, would be happy wearing them. So I have a couple on my gift list for the upcoming season. Okay, so that's my walking the talk for today. Walking the talk is usually a finished object, but I can also, I like to talk about other finished objects if I have them, and it just so happens that I do have one, which, if you remember, was that bath set that I was working on at the end of September. And I didn't give it a name, but I'll repeat it here just in case you're interested in seeing the complete set. There was a toilet seat cozy, there was a tank cozy that I kind of like invented myself out of parts of the elongated seat pattern and other patterns that I put together. And then there was this mat for the floor. Now, after I had made the elongated seat cover and the tank cover, I ran out of the cream yarn, which was from Premier Yarns, and so I didn't have enough left over from that to make my mat. So as always, I started looking through my stash. I used this one here, this colorway here. I used it for the elongated seat cover and also for the tank cover, like a highlight color, like to give it a second color. And so I had enough left over to use it. This yarn here is Lion Brand's Hometown USA. Is that it? I don't know. That range of yarns. And the color that I was using this was Montpellier Peacock. I had purchased a bunch of that yarn, not particularly this color, but several different colors from Walmart at one time where they had it on clearance. They were getting rid of it. And so if you remember, some of the colors I used to make a huge basket a while back, And this was the one color that I had never used, and I wanted to put it to use. So I incorporated it because of the fact that I had used it for the other two pieces of the set. And I also used this, a ball of yarn that I made by putting together 6 strands of different yarns that I had in my stash. Now that included DK yarns, fingering weight yarns, acrylic yarns, and cotton yarns, and cotton acrylic blends, all kinds of yarns. Whatever I could find that I thought kind of like matched the peacock, this peacock color. So I have cream colored, blue colored, green colored, brown colors, and put that ball together. Now, a month ago, is it a month? Probably more, month and a half ago, at the end of September, when I was showing you the other pieces, I had already balled up these 6 strands of yarn, and I began making the rug using a faux bobble that I have used previously in other projects that I presented here on the channel. But when I got back from Alabama, I was like, I don't know if I was going to have enough yarn to make it, and I kind of like didn't like the way it was looking. And I had just used the loop stitch to make my Winnie wig, if you'll remember from Halloween. And so if you didn't get that, you can catch up on that project. The last 2 episodes, I talked about making it, and then I showed you how I wore it the couple of days that I went out dressed as Winnie. So I used the loop stitch on part of my wig, and I said, well, I'm on this trend on the channel where I want to try and talk about a technique or a stitch or a particular type of yarn for more than one episode, to kind of like bring my episodes together, to always have like that theme that connects one episode to the other. Well, that's the way I thought it was going to work. I don't know if that's actually the way it is working, but anyway, this was done using the loop stitch. Now, I used the loop stitch a lot shorter. There is a short video on the, not the previous one, but the one before that, 2 episodes back, where I kind of like inserted a video of how I was making the loop stitch for Winnie's wig. And this, I used the same technique, but I kept my loops short. I kept my loops short, 1, because I wanted to make sure that I had enough yarn to do the project, and 2, because I think it would look better in a short loop for this type of thing. So this is what I turned out to be. Remember, I had 50 stitches here, 50 stitches along there, and this has 1 row of loop stitches, and to get on the right side and to go back, I single crocheted back. I used a 5mm hook for this, mostly because I wanted to be sure I'd have enough yarn. Turns out I did have enough yarn almost of the green, this color, almost on the last single crochet to get round row to get back to the beginning. I had to really cut off all my long ends and kind of like tie them all together so that I could actually have enough yarn, even if it was in pieces, to finish that row. But I used up all of the green yarn of the Lions brand Hometown, and then to have enough of the gigantic ball that I made of those 6 strands, then my second to last row, when I was returning, I returned in slip stitch, and then I did my loop stitches. And that was just enough also to finish. So it's got 44 rows, and 50 stitches. So it's slightly rectangled. Here's the back side, because I think the back side looks almost as pretty as the front. And so what was I doing? Probably 3 rows of loop stitches with the multicolored yarn, and then 1 row of loop stitches with the green, and it worked out. Oh, that was another thing then, because I didn't have enough. The last one, I only did 2 rounds of the multicolored because I didn't have enough for a 3rd one. So that's it. But I'm very happy with the way it looks. I will put up a photo. I think I put up a photo the last time, but I'll put up another photo so you can see the 3 pieces together this time. And I like it a lot. I like the feel of it. It is absorbent because it does have several strands of cotton along with the acrylic. And I used up a bunch of my stash. I used up stash from years ago. So happy with that. I'm always happy to make a stash buster because you'll know if you've been here for a while that I'm always talking about how I want to use up my stash, and it kind of like never happens because the more I use it, it appears that the more I have. I don't know what it is, but I've been doing a lot of stash busting lately. As a matter of fact, I do believe that all my projects today have been done with yarn that was in my stash. Maybe for another project that I never made, but it was in my stash. So, next along, I do have a list of things that I want to talk about here on the side on my laptop. So I'll be looking to the side every once in a while to keep track. Next thing that I am working on, definitely the next 2, are gifts for the upcoming season. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, I believe, not only a way that I used off my stash, I used a free pattern, and there was a third thing. Stash free. I can't remember the third thing, but there were 3 reasons why I thought this was particularly a good project. If I remember, I'll mention it. Let's see. So, I was working at RafaMusaDesigns.com. I was working from RafaMusaDesigns.com. Her name is Rafaela, the owner of the blog, and I looked through her designs. I don't believe I've ever made anything from there before, but mostly she does tapestry crochet. So this was going to be a project where it was going to be a good project to retouch and practice my tapestry crochet skills, and that's a good connecting idea for the next episode, probably because you can probably do a lot of tapestry crochet around this time of year because of the fact that if you do baubles, they are usually include more than one color, etc. So this was a good one. So, but then I found this pattern for a mushroom. I guess I should, this is, yeah, you can see it there if you look closely. For a mushroom pattern. For a mushroom pot holder, excuse me. And I thought, oh, well, I could probably use that to make a bag. And make 2 sides and a front and a back and 2 sides and a bottom, and I've got a bag. I also found in my stash, well, it's not my yarn stash, but I don't know, remember where I got this from. For some reason, I'm thinking about Clarisabeth and that she bought this at IKEA. I don't know. But anyway, this is a wool insert. It's like one of those things that you put inside a pocketbook, one of those pocketbooks that just has one, it just doesn't have any pockets, it's just empty inside. And so you stick this inside to kind of like give it more pockets because it has pockets and room for like cards and things like that. So it's an insert for a pocketbook. And I said, oh, how cool would it be if I could make that mushroom pot holder, add maybe a frame around it so that it would cover up the front, the back of the bag, and then make the sides and the bottom so that it could be a pocketbook. And so that's what I am trying to do. I am making mine with this Dishy cotton from Knit Picks, 100% cotton. It's a size 4, which would be a worsted in my ordinary language. And then we've got, I'm also using this one, which is a Drops Paris brown. Since Drops Paris is a brand that is sold quite frequently in the UK. I don't know if it extends beyond there to maybe even Europe or something. Anyway, they classify it as an Aran weight, which is a bit thicker, slightly thicker than the worsted weight that I have from Knit Picks. But it's working fine. I haven't had any problem with it. So let's take a look at what I've done up to now. Okay? So here's what I have up to now. And so with this, I am planning on covering up the front. Notice it's slightly bigger. Still not sure whether the back, I'll do another one of those, or I'll just do it plain. And then there'll be the sides and the bottom. And of course, a strap. Thinking about like a messenger bag maybe. So, yeah. I have to just tell you guys that I'm in love with the pattern. I just really like those patterns that are like discreet in the images they portray, but so cute at the same time. And that's what I think this is. Be it that if I would have thought about it, I would have not put this frame around it, because this is like a frame of dots that goes around the mushroom. And then she also frames the pot holder, which is something that I may or might not do. What I'm thinking about currently is maybe to join the pieces and to join them with single crochet in the brown color, if I have any left over, so that it's actually sticks out like these edges do, and it'll be a part of the design. Well, that's what I'm thinking about. But isn't that pretty? Now, the other thing I am enjoying a lot about using the site is that Rafaela also gives you a lot of hints and advice on how to do the best tapestry crochet. So there are articles on her blog about changing your color. There are articles on the blog about the differences between all the different types of color work for crochet, and how to work the front versus how to work the back. And so there's a lot of tips there that have made my tapestry crochet better. I'm sure it has. Well, first of all, I'm using cotton, and I have always liked the way cotton looks in tapestry crochet, because those stitches are so defined. It kind of like gives another level to the actual artistic design, and I enjoy that a lot. Now, this is the first time that I am using her tips for better hiding your yarn so that you don't get the different colors peeking out when you don't want them to. So one of the techniques was when you change your color, the first stitch to not carry your yarn for that second color. In the first stitch, don't carry your yarn, and then carry your yarn from there over. You know, if you've done any of this or been around for a while, that tapestry crochet is the kind of color work that carries the yarn across. As opposed to, let's say, letting go of the yarn and picking it up on the way back, or as opposed to any of the other techniques like the intarsia crochet, we'll let it go and pick it up later, as opposed to those, for example, what I used for my other tapestry, where I was actually cutting the yarn every time I had to change it and tying a knot. This one carries the yarn across, but the first stitch of every color change, you do not carry your yarn. So it's kind of like a float. So you see you've got all these small floats on the back. But I guess the idea behind it is that it's the back. And especially in this case, because it's going to be hidden, you're not going to see the back. Not that the back looks too messy, but you can definitely distinguish the back from the front. But I did see that technique, that she gives you about 3 techniques. This is the one that I chose to use. And I do think that it does help. It helps because it kind of like positions the yarn in the right place for you to continue carrying. Now, she only suggests doing it for the back, but I've been doing mine on the back and on the front. So, which is, you can't see it on the front because your yarn is always at the back of your work when you're working in tapestry crochet. So even when you're working on the wrong side, your yarn is still at the back because you carry it towards you. So it's still towards the back of your work, right? It's kind of confusing, but yeah. So all of these floats are always going to be on the back, which I didn't mind because keeping my front neat is always more of an objective for me than it is to having both my front and my back neat. If you are the kind that likes a person that likes to have your front and your back neat, then you could use one of the other techniques that she suggests. And she does say that for her, when you use more than 2 colors, she feels like a certain change in the bulkiness of the piece, but I'm not feeling that here. And I actually like the way there are very few places where the wrong color is coming out. So I'm actually liking this technique and thinking about adopting it. Of course, I'm working with cotton, which is what she works with. I would have to see if this also works with other types of yarn. But I am particularly very happy with this one because of the fact that I find it cute. I find it cute. And so both of these yarns were from my stash. This one I purchased when I submitted a pattern to a magazine that was never accepted, but I was planning on using this yarn. It was a wall art. And so I had, not a lot, but I had left over from that. And the brown yarn is from when Clarissa was here celebrating her wedding. And there was some of the soil of the different cactus that she was, or succulents that she was crocheting, that she made in this yarn. And so it was left over. I didn't purchase it, but it was still left behind in my stash. So I am very happy with that. And also always happy to be able to improve what I think I know by following somebody who does this more than I do it, following their advice. So I'm very happy with that project. Besides the fact that pot holders make great gifts for the upcoming season, and you could actually make a couple of pot holders from her site because she's got a lovely collection of them. I think it's perfect for what I want to do. I haven't looked at them to the point that I could remember if there are any other design that I would use for this type of project for a purse instead of a pot holder. But she's got lots of advice there, so it's a great site to visit. Even if you don't want to do any of her pot holders, you could apply her techniques to other things that you're making. So I'm happy with that. Stash Buster. The second project that I'm going to present to you today, well, the second in terms of my works in progress, was totally unplanned, maybe even uncalled for, I don't know. But you guys, if you follow me and have seen my latest episodes, you know that I chose to dress up as Winifred from the Hocus Pocus movie, specifically the second one that I watched in September. And thinking about gifting, I have said several times on this podcast that I always find it difficult to gift my older children because they don't craft and because they make enough money to basically buy whatever they would like. Sometimes you feel that they don't appreciate what you can buy them as much. So I always give them handmade, because even though it might not be something they would buy for themselves, it is something unique because it's handmade. So I went with that from my older daughter. She is a fan of Hocus Pocus. The one, I'll show you the spell book in case you are not a fan, and based on the views that I got from those episodes, I imagine that a lot of people are not a fan. Let's see. There is a site called evil.fandom.com, and on this site they give you like a brief history of the spell book used, and I mean history in terms of the fiction, you know, how it is used, what is supposed to be its history in the movie. And then, so that's it. Let's see. Oh, there's windows all over the place in this room. Okay. Just in case you haven't seen it before. So some of the features that you can see is that it's got an eyeball onto a side of it, and then it's the skin that is used to make the cover has been patched together in non-symmetrical shapes, and then there are serpents in the corners and down the side. And though you probably can't really see it here, but down this side there are fingers, like, you know, as if you were holding a book, there are fingers. And then this part here that surrounds the eye is sort of like a latch that comes up, and that's where the book opens. And the back of it, the back of that latch is a hand that covers that, you know, attaches to the back, I guess, to keep the latch in place. So yeah, I mean, from an artistic point of view, it's pretty cool, even though, I mean, it is kind of creepy thinking that you've got skin, human skin being joined. And so I guess leather was a good option because, you know, using cow hide instead of human skin. But anyway, I found it fun and entertaining to look up on the internet and see how many of the details that are included in book can be found, I mean, on the internet for free, just published by, not that I have anything against buying patterns. You all know that I buy patterns. As a matter of fact, the tapestry mushroom is free online, but I purchased the pattern from the designer because I wanted the chart, and the chart is not included in the free pattern. So, I mean, it wasn't that expensive, and I was fine with, I mean, you know, supporting a fellow crafter's part of what I think I do, even though if you remember that I am currently a retired math professor because I am no longer working. It's coming up to a year that I stopped working so that I could travel to the States and help out with with taking care of my grandson. And but anyway, the pattern was not really expensive, and I was willing to give that amount to support the designer's designs because I think they're worth it. They're pretty, and they have helped me in the sense that I don't have to put my brain into making the design. I can just crochet it. So the next project is what I call freehand a bit, because it would be a lie to say that it was totally freehand or freestyle. Some of the things are freestyle, some of the things are freehand, some of them are simply designs that I have gotten from somebody and incorporated into this design. So I am going to put the links in the description box below to the different designs that up to now I have used for making this spell book. Okay? And so I'll give you some examples. The serpents that are, you know, up the, attached to the sides here, and down the side here, I found a pattern for a garden snake. Let me see if it's anything. LindaLou.com. LindaLou.com has a free pattern for a garden snake, and I used that to crochet the garden snake that goes down the side. I'm debating whether to add eyes to it. If you give a close look to this page, and also I've tried to stop the film. It's on Disney Plus if you have an account. And I think you can see the eyes. I'm not sure, but I'm debating whether to put them or not. I might just leave it like that. This is obviously supposed to be in metal. So this is made up with DMC Petra number 5 using a 1.75 crochet hook. And also inserting, once the body of the serpent is crocheted, I have inserted, what do you call those fuzzy things? It turns out that this company calls those fuzzy things fuzzy sticks. And so I used these. I didn't purchase this. This is something Elizabeth had also purchased and left when she went. So this is, let's say, in my stash. And so I inserted, into this one, I inserted 2. And that helps because now it'll keep the curve. It keeps the curve, but it's not as heavy as when you insert wire. So that was a cool thing to learn, that if you ever needed curves to stay in place, you can insert one of those fuzzy sticks, and I'm sure that has another name. I just can't remember right now. So I made that one, and I made 2 more, the ones that go on the side that are coiled up. So these, my yarn was thinner than the yarn that the designer uses, so I had to make my snakes longer. I had to make them longer. I believe that this one has 75 stitches. When I used the same amount of stitches as she did, kind of like I felt that the serpent wasn't long enough to coil because the yarn that I'm using is smaller than what she uses. So I made them longer. So she uses a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook and DK or light worsted yarn. She starts out with 50 stitches. So this one was done with 50, but now it's not big enough to do the type of coiling that I wanted. And so this one, I did more stitches, and I'm going to say 65. And this one, I did 75. Let's go with that. Let's go with those numbers, because I obviously, thinking that I'm never going to make this again, I didn't copy it down. But then thinking that, well, the back of the book, which is not shown on the site that I was sharing with you, the back of the book in the movie also has serpents in the corner, and I think it's 2, and then the hand at the back. So I don't know if I'll be doing that also. Okay, so I've got that. There is one of the patterns I found was for an eyeball. Now this was particularly funny because the designer was doing a self-portrait. And so one of the pieces that she needed was her own eye. So she wrote up a pattern for a human eye. And I said, oh, well, you know, that is cool because I can use that as the eye for book. And so that's what I've done. I'm not going to hide any of these because I figure that it will fill in my hole at the back so that kind of like the eyeball can stick out a little bit more. And so I have an eyeball. And basically what's left on the front are the pieces of skin. Well, yeah, these I am missing to make like a rectangular, simulating a piece of metal, a metal sheet that goes on the back of each of the serpents, but I haven't done that yet. What I have done is I have made up 4 pieces of skin, let's say, and the idea of book, if you notice, is that the pieces are stitched together with stitches that, you know, actually stand up. So I tried to imitate that type of stitching. Now my pieces are not cut identically to what book is cut because I just tried for shapes that I felt that I could easily recreate with crochet. Not that crochet can't recreate any shape, but just that I had the skill. I had enough skill to recreate it. So I went with around, this is where the eye is going to be. The eye would be here. It is enclosed in a circular piece, but I will not exactly a circle, but that, you know, a circular type of piece, oval. And so I went with a hexagon, and the pattern for the no hole, I think it's called hexagon, is also from Rafaela's site. And then the others, what I did was I began my design. Well, let's see. I began my design here in my little design notebook. And then from there, I started looking up the patterns that I could use for each of the pieces, and I wrote them down here. And then I made up like sort of like a sketch on 8.5 by your normal 8.5 by 11 paper. And then I split that sketch up into different shapes. And then as I worked, I would put my shape over my paper so that I could see how well it was fitting as I made it. Now that was particularly important, not for the hexagon. I just had to know when to stop. And this basically over here is a trapezoid, but it's not a no, it's not a regular trapezoid, being that all sides aren't equal, but the opposite sides, these 2 opposite sides are the same length as opposed to these 2. So with that one, I just had to be sure that I had the same amount of stitches here as the side of my hexagon. And now the other 2 I did need to recreate. For example, notice that this is also a trapezoid down here, but it's an irregular one if you remember anything about your shapes. So that one I had to continually put my piece on top of the paper and see, what can I do to keep this side straight? What can I do to make this side slant? And things like that. And so there's a lot of learning when you do this type of crochet work. As a matter of fact, I was thinking recently as I made this that I think that a freehand crochet project should be one of the first projects that anybody interested in crocheting does. Even if you want to be like a crochet designer or something like that, but you want to design clothes, you should still do at least one freehand project before you start designing. Why? Because in the freehand design is where you get to know how your stitches actually work, how tall they are, in which direction they lean, how to combine stitches to make a slant, how to combine stitches to make a curve, etc. There are a lot of things that you can learn from freehand crochet that you don't necessarily learn when you're just following a pattern that somebody else wrote. So I've learned a lot by making this. And I guess, let me see, out of all of them, this one was the most challenging, because notice the slant this way, and notice this is, you know, it should have been, it ends up looking like a curve, but it should have been both sides of the hexagon. But when I sewed them together, it ends up looking like a curve, which is actually better for book, because book, all the pieces are sewn together in curves. You don't see any particular shape in the design. So I've got 2 more pieces to go here at the top. And then notice that it's still like see-through, which I didn't like. But the reason was that I didn't have any yarn in my stash, the color that I wanted it. This like creamy skin color. I didn't have any. So I am using this cotton linen blend that I inherited from Clarissabeth when she left. And this is, I've purchased it in other before and it says sport, but I think this is fingering. So it was too thin for what I wanted. But then I had this other yarn in my stash, Omega Cries. It's 68% acrylic and 32% polyester, and also very thin. And I joined it with this yarn, and so that's the color that you're seeing. It's the combination of this, which is obviously a solid color and a lot browner, and this one, which is more tonal. But which was okay, because if you look at book, you can kind of like see that the skein is not all the same color. And so, yeah, my stitches don't always go in the same direction either. This is up and down, this is across, this is around. So I like that feature. And as I said, for this side, I have 2 more. I'm thinking about maybe gluing this or sewing it to either fabric or felt, maybe, to kind of like cover up the holes at the back. Although we'll have a notebook under it, so the notebook is going to cover it up, but I don't know. Maybe I'll just glue it directly to the notebook that I'm going to be using, or the wood box that I'm going to be using, depending on what project I decide to finish this up with. Okay, so I can include a picture here of what it looks like up to now, what it would look like up to now if I were joining all of my pieces. But basically, maybe you can imagine it. So I am using a 3.5 for my pieces. This is just, I'm just sewing in a whip stitch. And I think that's about covers. The yarn that I'm using to whip stitch is also from Stash. I have no idea what this is. I think it's a cotton acrylic blend, but I don't remember where it's from. So my suggestion for anybody who wants to go into this type of free-form project is to make a sketch, and particularly try to keep your crochet aligned with each of yours. I subdivide my work into shapes that, you know, whatever shapes you need, and then you try and keep your crochet aligned with those shapes. So these 2 are done. What's left, this one here that says snake in the corner, well, my snake is done. I just need to do the little metal plate that goes in back of it. And so up here, I've got 1 piece here, because this is just the metal plate that goes underneath the long snake. So the piece of hide I need here. And then the other piece goes like this. I think this will be the most challenging. figuring out how to make something like that. So it has been, even though, I mean, the seriousness of the project is not maybe, it isn't a serious project. It's not something that anybody is going to wear. Hopefully it will be something that will be appreciated and at least observed maybe once every year at Halloween time. But there's a lot of learning that goes into making this type of project. And so I'm very happy with the learning. And it's entertaining because you're not doing the same stitches all the time. You have to change your stitch. You have to change the way you think about crocheting even, because nobody is telling you what pattern to use. Well, yes, give it the fact that the serpents and the fingers and the eyeballs will all have patterns, because I even found a pattern for the fingers that go around the side and the hand that will be at the back holding on to the book. But they were written for other purposes, and then you have to adapt those patterns for what you're trying to do. So there's a lot of learning in it, and you might not approve of that type of project in the sense that it might not be a project that you would be willing to undertake, but I think that there's a lot of learning. And so, I mean, it has its merit. It has its merit if it's just, you might pick a different project, but you would still do a lot of learning. I do have another project on the go, but I am going to leave it out of this episode and share it with you on the next episode, because of the fact that this is going to be way much longer than any of my previous episodes, and I would like to always keep it under 1 hour. So, life updates, you know that I've been back. Well, you see me. I'm in my home in Puerto Rico. I don't know if I'll be going to Alabama, returning to Alabama before the year ends. I would like to, but my husband is not too keen on that idea. We will be traveling to Florida to be with Clarissa for Thanksgiving. That's this week. We'll be traveling to spend a week with her in Florida. And my husband has already purchased tickets to also spend Christmas at her house. For all the particular reasons, it's a lot cheaper to go to Florida than it is to go where any of my other children live. And it is also a lot easier because it's a direct flight, and it's not, we don't have to do all the connections like we have to do if I visit any of my other children. And so, yes, that's what we're going to be doing. So if in between that, I will have time to visit Lucas, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I will keep you updated on that. He is thriving. My son tells me that he is getting a lot closer to beginning to walk, because he's getting stronger and he's getting more confident, and he's also working a lot on his balance. But I am very sure that he's just on, he'll do it. He'll get on to that normal, like, sort of timeline, and move on with all of his basic skills. So thank you for joining me today. And thank you for listening if you've stayed from beginning to end, because this is a long one. And I'll be back shortly. So until we meet again, keep yourself safe, keep yourself happy, and keep crafting.